Hi, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to Poem Praise 2. I do thank you for tuning in. We are now going to get into chapter 1, The Black Woman's Guide to Understanding the Black Man. And chapter 1 is Babyhood and Purity. And it goes like this. Let's go ahead and get into it. Adult black men over the age of 40 have similar childhood backgrounds. They remember their past somewhat fondly at times, and whatever complaints they recall are seemingly small unpleasantries when compared to the horror reports and wayward status of black male youth today. The majority of them were taught proper table manners, how to behave in public, respect for elders, the importance of attending church, neatness, household chores, control of his mouth, to be nice to girls, to fight only if aggressed, the value of education, modest goals, moral convictions, obedience to parents, reasons to reject alcohol and tobacco, and why they shouldn't talk back. As a small boy, he played with ropes, Chinese checkers, puzzles, cards, dominoes, marbles, bikes, scooters, blocks, kites, wagons, electric trains, balls, trucks, guns, and cowboy hats. His make-believe heroes were Superman, G.I. Joe, the Long Ranger, and Tonto, the Cisco Kid, Batman, Zorro, Roy Rogers, and Davy Crockett, and Daniel Boone. He learned of them from comic books, television, and radio programs. He was aptly entertained by Howdy Doody and Pinky Lee. He read Snow White, Little Red Riding Hood, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, the Three Pigs, and a host of nursery rhymes like Hickory Dickory Dock, Little Miss Muffet, Humpty Dumpty, Long London Bridges, and Jack and Jill. Television showed him movie pictures of Superman, and he watched Father Knows Best, Ed Sullivan, Ted Mack Amateur Hour, Beat the Clock, The Price is Right, Queen for a Day, Alfred Hitchcock, Roy Rogers, and Dale Evans, Topper and Perry Mason. He heard stories about Paul Bunyan and John Henry. Included in his visual were other shows, all featuring brave, handsome white male performers with glamorous female starlets, mostly with long, blonde, flowing hair and sky blue eyes. He committed her features to memory, and she was the first woman he drew a picture of in school. He loved to go to the movie theater to see gangster, western, and war flicks, Tarzan and Bwana and King of the Jungle. Every action, every emotion, attitude, or moral judgment was demonstrated for him on the big screen in black and white, or color cinematography. Cinematography. Hope I said that correct. Let's keep it moving. With every situation featuring Caucasians conducting their business and social affairs. Lana Turner, Doris Day, Dinah Shore, Marilyn Monroe, and Debbie Reynolds were just a few. Rock Hudson, Elvis Presley, Troy Donahue, and Clark Gable premiered as the top male actors. If the black man saw himself on TV, it was as the cook, the waiter, shoe shine boy, dishwasher, baggage carrier, car washer, maid, or babysitter. Always, but always in the employ of wealthy whites. If he wasn't sweeping the floor or running from ghosts, he was seen dancing a jig, grinning as wide as possible and stretching his eyes to the limit to show the most white, or making other facial contortions designed to be funny and show him up as ignorantly playing the fool. Some played in big bands and grinned along with the music, but never spoke. He may have had the rare opportunity to see a Raisin in the Sun, Imitation of Life, Rochester on the Jack Benny Show, Amos and Andy, and the Kingfish, Cameron Jones or Green Pastures or Steppin' Fetchin' with Shirley Temple. He did not seem to wonder why he wasn't featured in the key roles in the movies or on the TV. TV was fairly new during his childhood, and it was basically understood that white people were in charge of TV land. Then he was introduced to Uncle Remus and the Tar Baby, Buckwheat and Alfalfa, Little Black Sambo, Aunt Jemima, on the Pancake Box, Uncle Ben's Rice, and a host of other mammy products from syrup to shortening. He was aware of many outside influences that did not look like him, but his life had structure and his community was in agreement on certain behavior codes and in-home values. In the South, the difference between him and other races were more pronounced, and he was introduced and reminded with public signs that not only was he unlike, but he had to move about in the world carefully. One of the main reasons he was taught to read was so that he did not accidentally go in the wrong door, drink from the wrong public water fountain, or get caught in certain areas after the sunset. His mother taught him to fear and be extra polite to whites as a way to protect himself, and she warned him of improper conduct, especially around white women and little white girls. He was taught to lower his eyes and never look them directly in the face, to remove his hat when addressed by them and never walk too close behind, beside, or in front of them, lest he be charged with being disrespectful. There was a penalty that went with disrespecting a white woman, so he must always keep his distance. He was warned that even an accidental glance could cost him his life. His parents and grandparents advised him to be friendly, smile, helpful, and do what he was told to do. Use good manners and be proud if whites recognized him or approved of his work. He was educated in a mode of behavior to save his life. He eventually heard stories about what whites did to the blacks if they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he was not bored because blacks had their own sections of town and recreation outlets which they could freely frequent and which were sometimes visited by whites at will. But he was strictly forbidden from ever trying to patronize theirs. He learned to dance for whites. No matter where he lived, whenever it was time to have a party, they had fun. His father, if present, earned about $1,000 to $3,000 a year in income, although he usually never knew it. Provisions were made for him, and he witnessed attempts to make sure he was not hungry. So, other than owning a television set, there was little to compete with his family or their status in life. He was relatively comfortable in most cases and didn't realize, for the most part, if he was rich or poor, since his black neighbors and friends all appeared to live the same way he did. Many of their guardian maintained single-parent households. It was not that unusual at the time. If one of his friends lived with both his mother and father, he was revered as quite special. Many of their mothers had been friends who visited, stayed overnight, or lived with them periodically. He was taught to respect his mother's man and referred to him as Mr. So-and-so, and to make few demands on his stand-in father, and he often knew little, if anything, about his own biological daddy. It wasn't discussed much in the presence, and if the missing father showed up in town or in the neighborhood for a visit, it was considered a big deal and something to brag about. He was somewhat stifled regarding questions about his father. If he was told anything at all, it was some flamboyant reputation attached to his father, or he was given a overly negative historical account about how no good he was. He was routinely shipped, especially during summer, either to the north or down south, to visit with relatives where the house rules were the same. If he did something wrong, the whipping hurt just as bad. Often he witnessed his mother fighting with or being beaten up by one of her male friends. He got used to the stale smell of whiskey on Friday and Saturday nights. There was little he could do about it, but it made him dislike these unpredictable strange men who were too big for him to fight or defend his mother from. Many times his frustrated anger was directed and blamed on his AWOL father. AWOL, absent without leave. He later learned to milk his mother's man for spending change or other minute benefits to forget what happened or to stay out of the way when he was visiting. He was also exposed to other elements in his community: the drunks, the slick-haired, finely dressed, numbered men, the runners, the fast, loose women reeking of heavy perfume, wigged down in tight dresses with luscious, exploding bodies, the holy rollers, piously dressed in all white or strict black suits, the impeccable dressed gamblers, the owners of flash-colored bulky cars, and the neighborhood retard or cripple. He knew a little about everybody's business just as they knew about his. Many of these images struck him as exciting and represented fun and freedom topped with money. He would listen hard when the grown-ups talked so he could learn about the fast life and community gossip. If he got caught listening, he could count on getting whopped in the mouth or sent outside, out of earshot, even if he did not live around such characters. He heard about their existence, and they were role models of a sort, and helped him have good dreams of growing up and wearing fine clothes and being successful in street life, cool without working hard. Much of the reality of life between men and women was kept from him. He learned certain things about sex in whispered conversations among his friends. Getting a kiss was considered a big thing. Grown-ups kept grown-up things out of his face, private. As far as he knew, being a boy, when compared to being a girl, other than the fact that he had a weenie and she had a poon thing, only meant that he had to do heavier chores around the house, take out the trash, run errands, carry large packages, stay out a little later, and he could travel further away from home on his bike or by foot. And I must stop it right there for Chapter 1, Take 1. Stay tuned for Chapter 1, Take 2 here on Poem Praise 2. And certainly if you like what you're listening to, like, share, and subscribe. And until then, I will be speaking with you real soon. Later, y'all.